Why is Florida State's players just finding all kinds of different ways to acclimate so quickly to Gus Malzahn? And why is the offense just exploding across the board?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you haven't already, make sure you go check it out at FanDuel.com. Get your future bets in today. The football season is absolutely here. We're going to be talking all things Florida State offense. And the overall theme, why did the players assimilate so quickly? And really, was it a big change from what the offense they were in? What were the differences? We've got a special guest that's going to help us with that. But again, why did they assimilate so quickly? And what's left? Like, is it going to be more run game? Is it more passing game? What does Florida State have to do to go to another level, especially when they play better opponents like Miami, Clemson, Florida, etc.? So let's figure that out together on this podcast. And to help me get that done, Mr. Doc Staples. For those of you that follow Florida State football, you've probably seen him on the internet in some capacity. I listen to Doc's podcast, and I'm like Doc. I enjoy the scheme stuff he's coached. And by the way, thank you, Doc, for coming on the show. But this is one of the things that I was curious about, because no matter what offense you run, when you have a new coordinator, new play caller come in, it can sometimes be difficult to hit the ground running. Obviously, Florida State did. No, they scored 31 against Bama and probably should have scored another 7 to 10 at least. I mean, it's debatable, but somewhere in that range. So I'm going to give this first question to you. Why so quick for the offense to take off?
Well, I would love to say that it's just a matter of Mike Norvell's offense and Gus Malzahn's offense are kissing cousins. They're really similar. I mean, Mike's offense is really just a fork of Gus's. I mean, anybody, and I was trying to say this in the offseason, that anybody who expected there to be massive wholesale changes schematically and everything to what they do, or the idea that there would be, large-scale changes in terminology or whatever, didn't understand either offense. I mean, what Mike runs has been for years a derivation, a fork off of what Gus runs. But Gus has some specific, if you think about it as a language, he's got a specific dialect, a specific way that he calls his offense.
Sure.
And the biggest reason that doesn't work as an answer is you got 11 new starters on offense. Guys that weren't even on the team last year. I mean, you didn't have Squirrel White, Deuce Robinson. You didn't have the only starter that started a game last year
Richie
that
Leonard
was on this roster is Richie Leonard, who didn't play most of last year.
That's right.
So you got 10 new starters in terms of from the beginning of last year, 11 compared to the end, and only 10 guys on this team that were actually on last year's roster. So the explanation of, well, they didn't change that much doesn't really work because all these guys are new. And at that, half of these guys didn't actually get a chance to rep this in spring because a bunch of them were recovering from injury. Gunnar Hansen, Micah Pettis, Luke Pettibone missed some time, as I recall, in the spring. Squirrel missed some time in this, good bit of time in the spring. These guys were all getting healthy. So it took a long time for them to just get guys. I mean, it wasn't until Gus has talked about it. It wasn't until really the 3 weeks of camp, and really even the second week of camp, that they had everybody healthy and together, working together. So you can't really say, oh, well, there's continuity, at least not with players. But I do think that there are a few things that you can point to. Number one, the most important thing for an offense in terms of being able to run what you want as a coordinator and to be able to operate seamlessly is the connection and the synergy between the offensive coordinator and the quarterback. And this is something I did talk about in the offseason, is one of the biggest benefits of taking Tommy Castellanos was the guy has played in Gus's offense before. Yep. Not only do he and Gus know each other and respect each other, but he's actually spent a full season repping Gus's offense in practice and a couple appearances in games. So you're looking at a guy who's really in his second year in Gus offense, and then with starting experience to boot. So this was not a matter of learning from scratch for him. This was just a matter of plug and play. Oh yeah, I remember that. No problem. And add that to what he'd learned. You've got an experienced guy who's got experience in that offense. So that's the most important thing. And the next most important thing for offensive continuity or offensive performance in that respect, when you've got a new coordinator, is if you're really good on the line of scrimmage, then that solves a whole lot of other problems. So if you're good at quarterback and you're good at the line on the line of scrimmage, that really helps. Everything else looks good. I mean, those are force multipliers. Last year was the opposite, right? If you're bad at quarterback and you're bad on the line of scrimmage, you have a negative force multiplier. I mean, if you're bad on the line of scrimmage, but you've got a really good quarterback, your line of scrimmage is going to look okay. If you're bad at quarterback and you're dominant on the line of scrimmage, you can kind of hide where the quarterback's weak. If both are bad, then each drags the other down to new levels of low. And then if you can't catch the ball to boot, well, you've got what you get last year, right? So the difference then is you have a bunch of guys with hundreds of snaps of experience at the Power 4 level, right? Gunnar Hansen has, I don't remember what the actual number is, but like 1,300 snaps in SEC play at left tackle. Adrian Medley's a fifth-year senior who's played multiple seasons in Gus Malzahn's offense in the Power 4. Now, granted, the lowest level of the Power 4 in the Big 12, but still. Pettibone is I think he might be a first-team All-American center this year. And, smart enough, you don't worry about centers learning the offense. They get it. And then you got Leonard, who's returning in Mike's offense, so he already knew all the terminology and basically what they're doing up front. And then all you have left is Pettis, who's got years of experience as well. So they hadn't played together to gel, but all these guys know how to play, and they were all actually coached pretty well at their prior stops. I mean, Medley was coached by hand. Pettibone was coached well at Wake Forest. Richie, probably the least well coached of the bunch in terms of who he was under at Florida, and then last year at Florida State, and then Micah and Gunnar both well coached at tackle. So now you've got the foundation and the quarterback and the line of scrimmage, and now you're okay. That's the foundation that you can start from. And then the third thing that I would point to in terms of the ability to really install and get everybody on the same page is that you didn't just hire a new coordinator. You hired a new coordinator who brought his offensive line coach, a guy who's coached with him at multiple stops before and knows this offense, this rush offense, and how they want to do it pass-wise. He knows this offense inside and out and has done it with success for a long time. So you brought him in. So you've got automatic connection there. And then you've got the wide receivers coach that you brought in who came in with Gus. They're on the same page. And then the guys who are left over from Mike knew we're going to be on the same page with him, and therefore they're on the same page with Gus. And they're used to running basically an offense with the same terminology, the same kind of stuff. And it's just a matter of, with Gus, you're going to get more, jet motion. You're going to get more pre-snap eye candy. You're going to get all sorts of, one of the things that Gus is most distinctive about is all the misdirection. Gus has said for years in coaching clinics, he just doesn't understand why people don't run more reverses. He's like, every time we run it, we seem to get extra yards. So why wouldn't you do it? Anytime teams start to crash down on your runs from the backside, you should just go ahead and do it. Well, he does it. He puts his money where his mouth is on that. And he makes it pay, and he's got, all sorts of different variations of it, and then he's got variations on the variations. I'm waiting now on the fake reverse to Danzy that's going to result in a wheel up the opposite sideline. That's coming against Miami is what my guess would be. So you're going to see the fake to the back, what looks like a fake toss to Danzy on the exact same action, and you're going to see Castellanos sort of boot out to that side just to get a little space, and then hit that flat route or hit that wheel up the sideline, and you're going to see something go for a big play against somebody because he's been setting that up with that play now a couple different games for scores. Somebody's going to sit on that, and they're going to go, reduce split, that's 19, watch reverse, And you're going to see those guys take off. And then what does Gus do? He's going to have a counter to the counter. So that's some of the stuff that he just does so well as a play caller and as a schemer, a game planner, that also helps you. But it's the alignment institutionally, organizationally, where you have a coach who's coached with the offensive coordinator before, and then the offensive coordinator with a offensive line coach and a receivers coach that he brought with him, and then a couple other guys who are all on the same page. Everybody's on the same page from minute one on the coaching staff. Nobody has to relearn how to do anything. And then all it is about transmitting that to players. And they went out and they got guys who are not just talented, but experienced. And then at the quarterback position, experienced in that offense. And that's why it's working. The scary thing is when you watch the tape, they're not actually there yet. They're not actually at the point where they're hitting on all cylinders. There have been some misses, just little things to clean up where it's like, ooh, boy, they can still clean that up. Like you said, against Alabama, they had a couple plays that they missed on, and then you add the punt return, or the muffed punt, which actually wasn't a good call because that did hit the foot, which I didn't see in live action. But you take that, and they could have scored 45 in that game if they were actually hitting on all cylinders, and they weren't. That's the scary thing, is that this team still has another gear they haven't hit.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be really fun, and I want to talk about that next. And you mentioned it. It was a great segue. The jet motions and all that stuff. I think a lot of people are surprised because at least 2 out of 3 plays, there's somebody coming across the formation. And 2 out of 3 is probably conservative. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles. Time to fuel up and get ready with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. The grape ginger and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course flavored to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for everybody at the course. Whether you're just out on the course just to have a little fun or you're trying to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. So you could be playing a high-stakes game with the buddies, or you could be just out having a little bit of fun shooting around on the course by yourself. 5-Hour Energy is there for you. Tee up, and for the next trip, visit 5hewin.com for your full rules and entry. No purchase is necessary. Excludes the Masters Tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. And we are also sponsored by FanDuel. FanDuel is our official sponsor, and the NFL season is upon us. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff and the can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. If you want to check out MVP, if you want to talk about who's going to AFC, NFC, over-unders, player props, anything else, you can do it over at FanDuel. So you're ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles a part of your day every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are joined by Doc Staples, big FSU guy, got his own work. And we'll let Doc plug his stuff here in a little bit. But Doc, this next one is right in your wheelhouse. It's something you and I enjoy, watching film and all that stuff. We were talking about how Gus's offense has so seamlessly, it seems, worked in. But now the sub point to that, all the motions and the jets and the timing, they figured that stuff out. But boy, the defenses haven't. They've gained leverage so many times on just generic plays after the snap. But it was the motion that was the key. I'm like, okay, they got them outnumbered over here. They're not moving. They're in trouble. And then they got 6-on-5 or 7-on-6, whatever. Like I think it was the game against Bama. Tommy goes around the left end when they brought a guy across. They used the running back. I'm sure you remember the play. Tommy's explosive. Like I saw him in high school. I saw him at UCF. They were lucky he didn't score on that because they had a numbers advantage. And Bama did a pretty good job of pressing him to the edge or he'd have been gone. At some point, we're going to see that generic, and I do mean generic play, go for 60+. I guarantee it. Explain to people why Gus uses motion so much, and Mike's down with it too.
Yeah, and actually that was one of the things that some of us were criticizing the FSU offense of the last 2 years, not just the 2024 team, but even the 2023 team for sort of going away from, because that had been a Mike Norvell staple in the past. If you go back to his time at Memphis, even early at Florida State, they used more motion. Specifically, they used more of that kind of motion stuff and more misdirection stuff when Dillingham was coordinating. And over the time where Atkins was involved, they got more stagnant. They got more static in terms of where they were standing and all of that. And there was just less overall motion. And you could do actually an analysis. You could look this up about what the success rate was when there was motion and when there wasn't. And there was a difference. It was a positive when there was. And they just didn't do enough of it, honestly. And the motion that they did do wasn't the kind that really impacts you the way that Gus's constant motion does. So there are a couple things here. One is what motion, first of all, does is it changes the look for the defense, in that whenever there's a guy moving, the defense has to know where that guy's going to be and adjust coverage, adjust to whatever's happening. So the first thing that does is that gives a quarterback a live look at what the defense is actually going to be in. It forces defenses to be more honest. So for one, when you see a guy chasing the motion man across, you know it's almost certainly man. That's 99% man. All right, I got man coverage of some sort, which means that they're either in just pure man free, or more likely they've got some sort of pressure coming from somewhere. And now I can check that. Like if I've got all my other keys and I see that happening, I know where I'm at. The second thing, though, and this is more important in an offense like Gus's, is what he's doing is he's not just using motion as eye candy. He's using it as a threat to get to the flank. So he's really big on forcing defenses to defend all 53.5 yards of width. He wants you to have to defend all the way from sideline to sideline, because his goal is to create vertical seams for his guys to go straight up the field. And in a lot of ways, there's some similarity to what Gus does to, the old Paul Johnson flexbone type thing. And, some of those things where, you'd get the orbit motion and all of that, and you get the pitch out there, and everybody's terrified of getting flanked. So you've got to make sure you set that edge, and committing a guy to set that edge extra. A lot of times you're just going to get that extra half a yard or 2 yards of width from a backer in the box or from a defensive end. And what do? Well, now you've got an angle on that, and you can hit that right up the gut, and now you've got a guy that's running free. Or now you've got 7 yards where you might have had 2 before, because of the threat of getting a guy to the boundary or to the flank. And one of the things that Gus does on top of that is that he uses his personnel specifically to put the guys that you're most terrified of in those roles. Right? It's one thing to have, a jet sweep threat to say, and, Deuce Robinson's a really good athlete, so don't get me wrong here, but it's one thing to send Deuce Robinson in motion. Okay, like we got to make sure we're adjusting our coverage to him. It's a completely different thing to have Mekhi Danzy go in motion on, some sort of jet sweep motion or something like that, because if that guy gets to the outside, if he flanks you a little bit, he's gone. So you got to get out. You got to make sure, okay, widen. And while you're worried about that, Gus is going to hit you right in the teeth. I'm coming straight at you. And that's what is really sort of fun and elegant about his system, is pardon my French here, but the lethal simplicity of it. Is he basically, he's going to run standard inside zone, counter, these sorts of things coming straight at you. And he wants to do it with the most physical, punch you in the mouth, big offensive line possible. And then what's he going to do? He's going to pair that with the fastest athlete he can find. He's going to take an Anthony Schwartz, somebody like that at Auburn, who ran 10.07 in high school. He's going to take a Mekhi Danzy, who set the ACC record in the 400, and he's going to say, well, he may not be able to do anything else good, but I know that boy can run. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the ball in his hands, and let's see how defenses respond when he gets the ball and he's just running. See somebody catch that boy. That's what he's going to do. That's Gus, right? Good luck catching that man, guys. And he's going to use that speed to force defenses to commit an extra player there. And it's just like having a running quarterback changes the angles for the defense. Oh, And Gus will combine that with a quarterback who can run and use the quarterback run threat as well. And there were times against Alabama, and you called out that initial play where they've got a jet sweep action and they're terrified of the jet sweep. So they react to that, but they don't realize that there's a quarterback counter coming behind it following the jet sweep. And the jet sweep ends up being the lead blocker. Okay, now you got a really fast quarterback on the edge who's flanking you with help because you had to commit to the other part of the run and you thought you had the jet sweep stopped, but actually he's the lead blocker. So that's the stuff that he does that just it's a nightmare for defensive coordinators because as a rule, defense at this level at any level of football is all about gap control. Yeah, and you have 11 guys, and you have essentially those 11 guys are going to cover the gaps. One, you've got your safety who's going to be an extra. He's your +1. He's for the quarterback. But up front, let's say you got 5 offensive linemen and a tight end. You've got 7 gaps. 1 on each side of the center. You go all the way out to the outside of the tight end. You're going to get 7 gaps. The front is going to commit 7 guys to that. That's great, except when you have those 7 guys and then you run the tailback, you've got every gap committed. But what happens if you don't hand it to the tailback and the tailback's the lead blocker through and actually smashes the guy responsible for that gap, and you get the quarterback that ducks in behind him? That's where the quarterback becomes a +1. You better have a safety now or somebody who's not in the normal run fits who can be a second guy in a gap. But which gap is it going to be? That's the problem. And so now what Gus is going to do is he's going to make you defend the width of the field with the speed. He's going to make you add a +1 to account for the quarterback. And he's going to mix these together with that power running game. And if you get a guy that's out of a gap, or if you get only one guy in a gap that he happens to put 2 through, then all of a sudden it's a bust and you got potentially a long touchdown. And that's before you get into the passing game, right? That's the next step. And we haven't, you saw it a little bit against East Texas A&M, but that's the next, the other thing that he tends to pair with this is he takes a enormous wide receiver like Deuce and puts him on the boundary and says, okay, go ahead and cover that man on the boundary with one guy. See how that goes for you, right? They're going to back shoulder you. They're going to throw verticals. They're going to throw glance routes on the RPO stuff where, okay, you're going to defend that vertical. Well, we're going to turn you inside, and now he's going to the post with a one-on-one, and we're just going to stick it right on his nose and see if you can hang with that. Fine. Good luck. It's a bunch of one-on-ones in the passing game. And then the same thing on the other side. He's going to put a fast guy out there and say, can you keep up on the post? We're just going to go vertical. Bama gave him a one-on-one. What did they do on 3rd and 11? Squirrel just ran right by him. Bama's got good corners, but at a certain point, speed wins out. And Gus and Mike has long believed this. That's why they went out and got some of the guys that they did in the transfer portal last year, hoping that they would work out this way, Benson and some of those guys. And it didn't work because they didn't have the right trigger man. They didn't have the offensive line in place, and just nothing gelled. But they believe that if you have the right combination of, you want one big freak and then one super fast freak on the outside, and force teams to cover those guys one-on-one because they're terrified of the quarterback run game and all the horizontal threats, and you're going to get a couple huge plays in the passing game every year. This is why Gus was such a handful for Nick Saban all those years at Alabama.
Yep.
When Gus was at Auburn, they played Alabama even, despite the fact that Alabama had a lot more talent. And it's because as good as Saban's defense is, you're still in a situation where Gus, and big game Gus, is a whole different animal. He's got all those extra wrinkles, and you're going to have to deal with the headache of maybe 3 guys come through the same gap this time. Better be ready. And you're ready for that? Well, in that case, play action over the top. You better have a guy that can cover that guy and run with him. So that's what they're doing. And when it all works, when you're good on the offensive line, you got a trigger man who makes the right decision consistently, and you have the speed to be that threat, it's devastating.
Yeah, I agree with you. When we come back, I've got one more question for Doc, because as he said earlier, and I did, this offense, in our opinions, has not hit that next gear. It's early in the season, but it's still got more to go. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Seminoles. Gametime is also a sponsor for today's show, and if you haven't used it already, it's a great time to use it because college football is back, Florida State is back, tailgates, the rivalries, everything else. There's nothing quite like it, but getting tickets can sometimes be a pain. Endless hidden fees and different things at checkout. You don't have to worry about that with Gametime. That's why I use it, and you should as well. The app is easy, and all you got to do is type in Florida State or any other team you want, and you can get to your ticket price very, very quickly. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. All right, last segment here with Doc. We both agree that Florida State still got a little ways to go. I mean, like I said this on Monday's show, it's kind of surprising. Give credit to East Texas A&M. 5 out of the first 10 runs for the Noles were less than 5 yards. I thought they would just come out and just mow them. They committed to the run in the inside. That's about the only place they could compete. It's just like you said, numbers. But they stuck with it. And then they hit big shots. No offense to them. They don't have anybody to cover deuce, score guys like they just don't. So that's why they committed to the run. This is the one thing we can at least be competitive with. Fair. But I thought watching some of the film, and you talked about this with the Alabama game, they missed some inside blocks on Chroma and different guys just in the Bama game. What do you think it's going to be? Because O-line is 5 guys trying to play as one, which is the hardest thing in the world. It's super hard. How much longer do you think that will take? Does it happen this year? Do they have the right guy? That's a big box question, but we already seen like they figured out the outside the numbers were good. The screen game's coming too. I think they haven't even touched on it very much. But Deuce over the top, Pittman will get healthy again. Thomas is not completely healthy yet. Like they got even more guys. I'm not worried about that. If they fix the inside and some of the little things, and it's 2nd and 5 more often than it's 2nd and 7. This offense against Miami, Clemson, Florida, and everybody else will be even more lethal. How long do you think that can take?
Well, you know, one of the best things for this team right now is that they've got 2 open dates before the Virginia game and then the Miami game come into play. You kind of like maybe one open date to be a little later in the year because if you do start getting banged up, you know, with all those conference games in a row, that's that becomes a factor. But you know, if you're trying to get right early in the year, getting the opportunity to just rep and get the opportunity to correct the things that you need to correct, okay, well, on this combo block, they showed this and then they, you know, that guy came across your face. Well, you've got to make sure that you're getting your shoulder into him this way, and then you're going to have to work your way up to the next level this way. It's little things like that. And the hard part, like you said, is working together as one. They're still getting the basics of the communication and playing as a unit together. And I don't think there's any question about the physical capacity of these guys. As long as they're healthy, they can play. And they're going to be a handful for anybody up front. The problem is, you know, as they see stuff that they haven't dealt with as a unit before, it's like, oh, okay, so when they do that, you're going to, with him here, this is where he's going to be. And it feels like this with him, right? So it's that stuff that they're still getting. How long it takes, you know, to fully get it right, you know, honestly, I don't know. And I don't think they know. You're hoping that by the end of the second open date, they're fully in stride. They've gotten to the place where everything's second nature. You're hoping, and you're counting on the fact that these guys have, you know, 1,000 starts apiece, or 1,000 snaps apiece. 1,000 starts would be tough, but 1,000 snaps apiece, trying to, you know, get a feel for just the new guy next to you. That helps pay off. But you know, the question of whether they actually get there, we can't know that. I mean, the biggest factor right now, looking forward in the season, is can they stay healthy? And, that's the challenge. Now, I said on my podcast in my last episode, I pointed out that dominant offensive lines tend to stay healthy, and tend to stay healthier than non-dominant offensive lines. And there's a reason for that. And one of those is that those offensive lines spend less time getting rolled up on by guys going down in the backfield, or getting rolled up on by a quarterback getting sacked into their legs. And, there's just less happening behind a dominant offensive line because they're opening up seams and the stuff's happening in front of them. So you actually, the interesting thing is that a lot of people don't think about this, but, a lot of people say, well, to be a dominant offensive line, you got to stay healthy. Well, that's true. But if you're dominant, you're more likely to stay healthy because of those factors, because you're just less likely to get fallen on, rolled up on, and all the things that lead to offensive line injury. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it means that it's a little bit less, you're less likely to have a guy go down when you're running for 400 yards and there's no tackles for loss. Because every time the back goes down, he's going down 6 yards upfield, and you're just mashing a guy and moving out of the way next. Those aren't dangerous plays for an offensive line. The danger is when you allow penetration and a guy goes down and oops, rolled up on you. Now you're out for 6 weeks with an ankle sprain or something, or a broken leg, that sort of thing. So that's the thing. We don't know if they're going to be able to stay healthy, but I'm more optimistic about this group staying healthy than I would be if they were struggling in any way, because of that aspect. And if they do stay healthy, I think it takes, I think by the end of the Virginia game, I think you're going to probably have some sense of where this offensive line is going to be in terms of gelling. And they'll be hitting stride, I think, right in time for what I think is the best opponent on the schedule, and that's Miami, Florida.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. Clemson obviously has not met their expectation this year.
They're still dangerous, though.
Oh, 100%, especially in Death Valley. That is one of the most incredibly crazy places to play in college football, no doubt about it. Doc, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge. Go ahead and take as much time as you want, plug your stuff. You run the Unconquered podcast, give everybody some knowledge.
Yeah, so I'm not hard to find. If you Google me, I'm there, but at Doc Staples on Twitter, or I guess they call it X now, whatever. I refuse to call it only that, on Twitter. And also Unconquered podcast. You can find me pretty easily there. Have that also located over at a Substack and so on. Check it out. Been doing it for 13 years now. So it's been quite a while. I'm not the young man that I was when I started, but we've seen quite a bit at this point, and happy to have more listeners. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to yours.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. You can find Locked On Seminoles wherever you get your podcasts for free, including YouTube, Podbean, Apple, Spotify. We will see you again soon here on the Locked On Seminoles.